This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, Lewitt, and Grace Design. You're hearing my voice right now on the Lewitt Pure Tube microphone through the Grace Design M201 Mark II mic pre mixed through Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes below. It's a great way to help support this show, and there's some great deals waiting for you there. Now get ready to rock.
I find the same with singers singing too. I have leaned a little bit in some vocal tuning. When I first started doing this, I thought, no way, I'll never do it. Like, let it be raw. I've accepted a philosophy of doing some vocal touch-ups to know that, like, you got 4 or 5 takes and somebody's going to stop singing with heart and feel and nuance.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lyd Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Look, if you're like me, then you love having cool instruments in your studio, right? No matter what style of music you make, Native Instruments gives your studio all the instruments and sounds you need, from drums, loops, and beats to the coolest synthesizers, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I love recording and tracking real bands in my studio, but then adding awesome overdubs from Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Battery, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid Keys, for example. Use the code ROCK10 now to get 10% off, or get Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples, all over at nativeinstruments.com. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding much closer to professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools, and the best part is that these mixing techniques work for you in any DAW, whether you're on Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, anything you can think of. If you're ready now to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lyd Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Dave Coleman, who grew up near the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area in Jamestown, Tennessee. He thought he'd become a park ranger, but his love of guitar and music sent Dave to Belmont University right here in Nashville. He started a band called The Coleman, which is still active after 24 years, had a brief publishing deal with Acuff-Rose Music, played for years with Duane Jarvis, and a long list of Nashville's roots and Americana artists. He's done producing, recording, and mixing, and these became his day-to-day around 2010. He's a self-described, quote, multi-instrumentalist with a community-driven heart, close quote. Dave has produced and recorded albums for Amelia White, Tim Carroll, The Rough and Tumble, Lynn Taylor and the BarFlies, Ned Hill, and many, many other artists. The Coleman, his band, have released 5 albums, with another coming out in 2024. I've had the pleasure of knowing Dave for many years, and in 2013 worked with Dave here at the Toy Box Studio, doing overdubs and mixing for one of those records called Escalator, which was a lot of fun to do. Great, great album. And I know we've done more sessions than that. I just can't remember them all off the top of my head. So, and then part of our story, which we'll get into in a moment, is I was over at my studio assistant, Jesse's apartment one day, and I heard this music coming from out across the house. and it was guitar. And I immediately, I always feel like I have a strong ear for, I can tell when the tone is right, So I heard some guitar playing in the other room and I was like, that is exactly what that's supposed to sound like. And it was Dave rehearsing. He was Jesse's roommate, and I went over and said hi. So please welcome Dave Coleman to Recording Studio Rockstars. Dave, my man, are you ready to rock?
I think so. I'll see if I'm prepared. I'm in a seat, so I'm ready to go.
Have you been waiting for that intro? Waiting for me to ask you that?
No, it's great, man. Yeah, this is so exciting. Thank you for having me. This is such a treat to be even included in this long list of really, really talented and creative people you've interviewed through the years, and all your work here doing this thing, advocacy for creativity. It's so great, man.
Well, it's fun, man. I mean, it's making records is fun. Making music is fun.
Yeah, and there's always more to learn, right?
Yeah, made a lot of great friends doing this too. Yeah, and there is always more to learn. That's the fun part about it. I guess it'd get boring if there was nothing left.
Yeah, it's just give the old 13 treatment today. Yeah.
Would it be boring if there was nothing left to learn, or would it just mean that we get to finally make great sounding records? I don't know.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
Well, so tell us a little bit in your own words. Give us a little bit of the story arc, the short version, I guess, for you starting out in music. It was cool to read that about you. I didn't realize that you were from East Tennessee.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of central Tennessee.
Well, it's the Cumberland Plateau, which is in between the Middle Tennessee Basin, but it's not East Tennessee with, the Smokies. It's that plateau or plateau, whatever people call it. And yeah, it's a special place. It feels like its own spot. I'm actually heading up there this weekend to visit the park again. Spend some time with my mom. So the plateau
it's literally like a higher elevation.
Yep. Mesa of the southeast. Yeah. But it's gorgeous up there, and not a lot of music. At least for my generation of whenever I was growing up, there weren't a lot of musicians in my small town. There were some bluegrassers, and oddly enough, probably a generation younger than me, Sierra Hull is from Pickett County, just north of there. And she's, maybe one of the greatest of all time in her spectrum of genre. So that it'll always humble you if you grow up in a small town and you think you're a big fish in a small pond, and a very small pond for me. And, she's like the white whale in that same small pond. I'm like, that'll humble you every time. So, but yeah, there was no music really going on up there. But I would drive down. My mom and dad were always so supportive. They got me a guitar when I was 10. I started going down to Crossville, Tennessee, to a little place called Mountain Music, back on a farm, and they had this really cool music shop, full music shop, drums, guitars, lessons, everything you could imagine, in the middle of nowhere. And they were such sweet people. And I took lessons from a teacher named what was his name? England.
Mr. England.
Mr. England. And I just reconnected with him. He's had a band in Knoxville, Tennessee, all these years, still in that same band.
I mean, that's impressive, dude. I couldn't remember my guitar player teacher.
Man. These guys he was the coolest.
I'm not one of those people who knows who my first grade teacher was. Well, I do know my first grade, but after that.
Oh, yeah. A blur.
It's a blur.
Well, you're just looking forward. That's good. I will say, like, I don't like to be, I don't like to be, what's the word?
Forgetful?
Well, there you go. I don't like
That's
to
how
be,
I feel.
I don't like to look back, and be nostalgic. There it is, nostalgic.
Right.
I want to hope that best days are ahead.
Yeah, it's easy to get stuck on our past. I mean, it's like the rough mixitis of life.
Yeah. And maybe that's just I've never had any massive success in the genre or in the world I live in. So maybe maybe I'm just like desperately looking ahead for that thing, you know. But I don't want to say, that. I just really want to look forward. But I do remember that guitar teacher so well because I just fell in love with guitar, man. It was so much fun.
Playing acoustic or electric or what?
Electric first, yeah. Had a little Hondo Strat.
Hondo.
Yeah, and man. But yeah, Bruce England was his name.
Nobody ever had a real Fender Strat. Everybody's story is like the Aria Pro 2.
Court.
I had a Court.
Yeah, man.
A Hondo.
Yeah, there's but I started taking guitar lessons and just loved it. And but there were no other really musicians to play with other than a few people. And thankfully, my neighbor on the block I grew up with is Jason Hitchcock, who I knew since I was 5. We started playing guitar together. My brother played some drums and some guitar. So we started a little band in my hometown, and we're doing, Pearl Jam record had just come out. The 10 record had come out, but we were also doing like Hot Blooded by Foreigner, like this real weird mishmash of like rock and then sort of the grunge era stuff, and But I think it informed us to like a lot of different kinds of things. And so that was that little music community. And then that band kind of fell apart at a certain point. And the only opportunity I had to do anything was to play in a country band up there with a few different people.
Which was probably a successful gigging band in Tennessee too.
Well, it gave us opportunities. Yeah, I remember coming to we won a talent contest in Crossville and got to come to Nashville to record. And I think I was 16. I think it was at the Soundstage.
Isn't that kind of the story? Those the 2 songwriting contest wins that I was a part of in bands put me in pro studios for the first time, and that was where I was like, "Oh, this is cool." Yeah,
we came to town. It would have been, I guess, 94, 95, and I don't remember where we went, but I remember I do remember specifically like walking in the door, and it was Pat Buchanan playing guitar.
When you came to Nashville?
When I came to Nashville.
Wow.
And man, he was just, super cool, like a total rock star, and blew my mind. And so and another great little side story, at the Soundstage when I was just a little kid, we're looking through the Rolodex at the studio because we're doing a night session, and the secretary's gone, all the crew are gone except for the engineer working with us. Looking through the Rolodex, Wayne Newton's phone number. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Did you write it down?
I want to. Oh, totally. I think we chickened out.
But we didn't have phones back then.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. We didn't have any cell phones. No. But so I did have some musical outlets, but I only had a few opportunities to do anything that I had to go where I could play and I could gig and I could start to have an understanding of what it was like to play in a band and pack up the gear, do the rehearsals, learn the songs, learn the arrangements.
With the country band or with your rock band?
Kind of with all those things. The earliest band was so loosey-goosey. And the other thing is that, in this rural place, there's no place to play. So we
had to travel.
Yeah, well, we had to do a few things. There was no really traveling. So what we would do is we would book, we booked the community center, which nobody used. It was like used for blood drives and for like a community choir, like once a year. That's it. Otherwise, it was just empty. And so we would book it, and we were in a band, but that's not to say we were popular kids. So 10 people showed up. Nice. We play our 30 songs that we mostly knew to 10 people, and but we were
that's the stuff stars are made out of.
Yeah, man. Right there, man. Oh yeah. But we would do that, and we bring in the recording element around. I got a 4-track when I was from Mountain Music when I was a kid, and in that time frame,
you got a 4-track for Mountain Music.
Yeah, for Mountain Music at Mountain Music. This guitar store where I took lessons. Yeah.
I just want to record me some Mountain Music.
Oh, well, no, not till later. I didn't, when I was there, I didn't really have much appreciation for bluegrass or country music until
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, 4-track was the double cassette and a microphone was my introduction recording. Well, that actually, the little Panasonic handheld cassette thing.
Yeah.
When we were kids, just, record a funny song idea.
Yeah.
But then my friends had the double cassette, and then a little later I discovered and learned about the 4-track when I was in college.
Yeah, man.
And got one, and that was a lot of fun to learn on.
Oh.
And then hitting the pro studio for a free session,
mind-blowing
winter session or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what's this all about?
Yeah. So fun.
So you came to Nashville to go to Belmont, which is a great school and a great music program. Especially now, they essentially have, I guess, because of Curb Music. Is that right? Mike Curb. They've essentially bought up and kept alive many historical studios in Nashville.
Yeah, it's a incredible institution. It's got its issues here and there, but I had a great time there, and it was a perfect situation for me coming from that rural background, coming to town, and needing a safe place to kind of grow up. It was like a little tiny town of its own here in town. And I immediately met some incredible people that I'm, still lucky to call friends, and grown up seeing everybody's different stories. Everybody starts at the center of the spoke, and everybody's, thrown out into the universe and finding their own path, and really, really fun, and really proud of my people that I went to school with. And it's neat to have
what
that.
years were you over at Belmont?
97 to 2001.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Graduated in 4 years, better than all my brothers. They took 5 or 6. So
yes, that is true. I definitely, I didn't spend extra time in college. I went to college twice, but that's because I went back for a different degree. But I did have friends who seemed to be there for a long time, and I met people who were like, like,
career
I'm
students.
Still trying to finish it out. And I was like, man,
I would have been a career student. I wanted to be a park ranger. I also maybe wanted to do medicine. And when I got to Belmont, I thought I eventually wound up doing music business. I didn't really want to major in music. I didn't have a massive theory background. It took me quite a few years later, and I'm still working on it. I mean, as everybody does, is of wrapping your head around real details and thinking fluidly on the fly with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't major in music, but I had some great opportunities to play with different people, and I had a songwriting class that was, it's one of those things. How do you really teach songwriting, especially if the goal is to be unique? It's maybe it's a great attempt and maybe a situation to foster creativity, but what is good? I don't know.
That's a good topic, and I would love to talk about that actually, because songwriting is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Man.
And I know you've got experience with it, and you've certainly worked with a lot of songwriters here in Nashville. But let's just go right to that for a moment. So, what are some things that you see as either the crossing, the meeting in the middle, or what makes them different between songwriting when you're thinking of career songwriting, commercial songwriting maybe, and Nashville style, where this is concept of write a song and maybe the song goes on to have a life through another artist or through whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
Versus songwriting as an original expression and, just what you want to do. Because, I came out of an interest in a background in like college rock and stuff like that. I liked weird stuff. I automatically didn't like what everybody else liked if it was really popular, and like the unusual stuff.
Oh yeah.
And with that comes like this, grappling with what's the difference between a song that's commercial versus a song that I actually like.
And yeah, that's a long conversation. A couple thoughts on it would be, I love people who embrace exactly who they are and don't get influenced or chase anybody else. That's the power that we all have inherent to us. We are subconsciously influenced by other people, but if you consciously and maybe lean too hard into chasing other people, it maybe waters down the special thing that's in you as a writer, or your potential. And it's a psychological game. I fight it every day, and I want to get back into more and more writing now. But I'm trying to figure out what it is I really want to say that I haven't said before.
That's a tough one, man. What do you say? I mean, it's like I mean, there's all these elements to songwriting. There's the musical stuff, there's the structural stuff, there's the arrangement stuff. I remember having no clue really what a pop song arrangement was before I started. And at this point, I can tell you exactly what a pop song arrangement is in my head.
Yeah.
It's 3.5 minutes and it's got an intro, verse 1, pre-chorus, chorus 1, tag, verse 2, pre-chorus 2, chorus 2, bridge.
Breakdown verse.
Maybe there's a breakdown verse, and then you go into the outro choruses and you're done.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember, that wasn't obvious to me at all before I started paying attention to things.
Yeah.
But then, beyond that, you've got melody, you've got lyric, you've just got like what makes good lyrics. But then, like you said, if you've got all that, what the hell do you want to sing about?
Yeah.
And what does that even mean? And
yeah,
does it matter if somebody else wants to hear what you want to sing about?
Yeah. And the thing I miss now is a youth naive approach of just wide open, say it. And I think in engineering or production work, the details were so focused on the big picture that we can become an internal editor really quickly. And I find myself not letting that free subconscious thing just flow and then edit afterwards if you want,
Yeah.
But that's my kind of current dilemma is like, I just need to sit down and clear my head and flow with something that feels important. But that's a goal here for the next few years. The band's, we finished a record a little while ago. I'm really, really excited to get it out in March 24 here, I guess. I think that's the plan, but I hope that I can find some new songs, and keep adding on them. Like when you're working with other artists, I'm sure you like to have somebody over track basics. So, like this is working or these songs work together. This is a cornerstone song of the record.
You mean like, let's do 12 songs at once in tracking versus just a couple? Or
I just say like
instruments or what?
Come in. An artist come in and have multiple, too many songs,
right? So
you can cull it down and shape it by maybe subtracting a few that don't quite gel to a unit or a group of songs that maybe have a narrative or an arc. And I'm not talking like concept record here or Tommy stuff, but like real, just a connectivity,
a theme of some sort.
Yeah.
Atom Audio's S-Series, crafted in Berlin, is a flagship line of reference monitors featuring 5 models from the compact S2V all the way up to the powerful S5H. The range builds on Atom Audio's iconic heritage with new technology for improved acoustic performance. With new woofers, redesigned waveguides, and a DSP engine, the S-Series ensures accurate frequency response, consistent dispersion, enhanced detail, and a forward-looking digital connectivity. Backed by a 5-year guarantee, Atom Audio monitors embody durability and professional sound for your studio at atomaudio.com. Yeah, it's interesting themes. I mean, I don't necessarily do exactly what you're describing all the time. That might happen more in the, the voice memo form, or in the
pre-production,
the rehearsal demos.
Yeah.
Have too many then, and then, kind of know which ones we want to work on in the studio. But it's probably also because if I'm working with another artist, it's in a paid professional capacity. So we're being like super strict about usage of time too.
Yeah.
With my own bands, with the guys I play with for fun, we'll record as much as we can. And then sometimes I find, Chris, who's our lyricist and sometimes singer as well, he'll sort of like reorganize the songs into collections, and then they sound great like that to me. And I'm like, I think that's exciting too. But there's also, in those instances, he might have a concept about a theme for the record that has something to do with the poetry and the source material that I'm not even necessarily picking up on.
Yeah.
But my point with that really is that when you do land on what is something kind of a theme or a thread, or this is sort of the story arc of something, it really is helpful, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
For album recording.
Well, and I don't like to think about it too much. I really want to remain in the creative realm, but ultimately these things are vessels for people in their careers and playing live. And it's not just the studio thing. People have this whole thing they're working on, and so they need that record to do a thing. And that thing has to, have an identity. I was talking to a friend of mine, Amy Speece, the other day, who's brilliant, has made a ton of really incredible records. And I was asking her, like, how do you, you've made so many really cool records. How do you describe this new special one and make it sound different? And she's really smart. And so it's effortless for her to come up with a way to describe that record and put a brand on it that makes it something different. But those records need to have something to tie them together,
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm still working on a record of my own and a next record. And meanwhile, it's easy to put out multiple records with my friends. It's always easier to do that than do your very own thing, isn't it?
Yes.
But doing my own thing, it's like, well, what is this collection of songs? And so I just figured they're all like, they're all some form of heartbreak song or some form of, relationship song. And that gives themes. That's sort of a classic theme for making music too.
Timeless. Come on.
Timeless. But there's so much more to talk about. I mean,
yeah,
you could, if you want to, you could be writing political songs. You could be writing, somebody who's always done a nice job of writing songs that I hear and I think like, oh, that was cool. I like that you said that. I kind of wish I had felt bold enough to say as Joe Pisapia.
Oh man, yeah.
He writes sort of like mood songs or like feeling songs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Joe's sort of superpower is he can be so vulnerable and just lay it out there. Stuff that maybe we'd be embarrassed to say.
But we know you're fucking with us.
But
Joe.
everybody,
if you're listening right now, we know you're just messing with us.
Yeah. Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah.
I agree. And it's like, it's like sense of self. Like I feel good. The sun is out. I mean that can be enough to write a song on.
Yeah. I mean it's or just what it feels, what's like to feel joy. And these are esoteric concepts. Whereas, like I was going to say, like the other thought I had about songwriting is the pop realm. I wanted to kind of reference that, at least my understanding of it. And I'm no expert, but
today you are.
Today I've got a microphone in my face, so I will say this: there are people out there who do that so well, and they just have a gift for it, and they give people what they want. They want to hear it, and they find something that is just so sweet, or so sad, and it's a sort of a superpower. And I know people who, everybody's got a different kind of creative like color that they're throwing out there, and some people it's just effortless to do that. So it's really cool when you come across somebody who can do that, and it's so genuine. It's not forced or it's not crafted in this like hokey way. It's just they have this gift to do that. And I whenever I had my little publishing deal back in early 2000s, it was hoped that I could lean in that direction and learn from some really, really successful writers.
Did you do a lot of co-writing and things like that?
I did.
What was that like? I mean, break it down for us. Tell us what's a day in the life of having a publishing deal.
Well, this is a long time ago.
That's fine. You can remember from back then. I'm sure it's similar but different.
Yeah, I mean, it was sit around for maybe 3 hours and write a song, top to tail, put it on a cassette, submit it
by yourself or with somebody else,
or with somebody. Yeah, just and open door policy, lounge, go in.
And did you feel like the song had to be really complete, or did it feel like it could have that first idea quality that would be just enough to catch somebody's attention where they say, go back and work on this more?
Everybody I worked with, I think it was that sort of Nashville songwriting school of like the songwriter creates the melody, the changes, the feel, the pocket, and the structure. I think, at least my memory of all those songs was that the structure was really informed, and like you discussed earlier, that kind of that template of intro and just the components that come together.
And typically on an acoustic, you think?
Mostly, yeah. There were a few piano players, a few just straight lyricists that didn't play anything, that were just creative people that had a way with words. I mean, there's got to be more Bernie Taupins. That's the whole reference. But the lyricist thing is really cool. I've worked with somebody recently, a guy named Jeff Wickland, it's been really great. We've been working on a record where he's written lyrics, and I've used my sensibility with melody and changes to come up with these songs. And it's been great because I feel like I can tap into my musical subconscious and flow really easily.
And you get to just borrow his lyrics
and just use lyrics,
put them in the melody. That's what I've been doing with my buddies, the whole poetry scores thing, and it's very freeing. It feels like a dual relief and a songwriting exercise at the same time,
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe, like you said, like taking your own or being a part of something else releases a little bit of pressure you might put on just solely yourself,
Yeah. So it reminds me of working with kids in the public schools here, where they would write these pieces, these poems, spoken word poetry, and then bring them in to record. And I started encouraging them to pretend that somebody else had handed them a script and they were just an actor now, and it wasn't their words anymore. Just act it out. And I try to practice that myself a little bit in the studio too. And I just, I think that can be an interesting way to think of those things. Do you sometimes try and separate yourself from your own lyrics in a way, or do you do you hold on to stuff that you've written and recycle it back into song later, where you don't even remember, like it's not immediate anymore, so your internal critic isn't still running on those
maybe
words?
a little bit. Yeah. I think having stuff around I have lots of scraps of paper and notebooks and stuff like that, like everybody. I don't do that as much. I try and sit down and just write intentionally that day with whatever I have in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think, I used to have mini disc players and tape cassette players in the car, but I like to just sit down and just sort of do a meditative thing now whenever I can to do that thing. But
yeah. Well, I mean, it is, to me, that's desirable. I'd like to have my day be dedicated to writing a song.
Boy, that'd be great if I had some free time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that feeling in life that's the way it is. And so sometimes we feel like we got more time for just riffing and sketching, but maybe riffing and sketching and doing voice memos is a form of avoidance from actually doing what it is we want to do, because I think the number of times I sit down and just sketch out a song completely, and inevitably in that moment I'd be like, yeah, whatever, it kind of sucks, and then you come back later and you're like, shit, man, that's so cool. Like, it's all of a sudden, if you feel like you're somebody else listening to it, you can really get excited about your own stuff.
Yeah, the objectivity, totally. Yeah, we get so zoomed in. But yeah, the songwriting thing, that's what it's all about. I mean, you guys know this. This is nothing new. We're just trying to get a bunch of really, really well written songs, and make them into a record. And then, isn't it funny though that sometimes the recording process and the arrangement in the musical world can make maybe a weak lyric song into something really powerful. It can give weight to these words that maybe are a little loosey-goosey, but a great melody and a great band performance can make an incredible song.
Yeah, for me, doubling my vocal can transform something from what I thought was just a weak ass idea into something that sounds totally intentional. Like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I did. Well, that's cool stuff. Yeah. So let's see. So you sit down with intention to do it. If you're sitting down with intention to write a song, now you've got the double pressure of this got to be finished, this got to be good, maybe, or whatever, at the end of that session that day. What are some processes that work for you like that? How do you avoid the quagmire of, I only got so far on this. Now I've got to keep revisiting it over and over again to get the song done?
Well, in my experience, you're going to have those. Those are the outliers that sit around for a while and then come back to them. If they get, if they call to you, or if you think of them. But I think really just having stuff in the hopper, and that's what I was kind of referring to is when a band comes in. Like, I've had a lot of good experience if the artist has maybe 16 songs and we want to make a record, like we'll basic track 16, and then we'll know if something that they may feel like is weak has a pocket and has a feel, we'll flesh those out.
Keep working on.
We'll keep working on them. Yeah. Like, and I found that to be great, because I will say, everybody I've worked with, anybody I've ever talked to, like when somebody puts out a record, they think they know their cornerstone song, some song that is just like, that's the best one.
That's the single.
That's the one that people are just going to connect to. And it's never that one. It's something different on that record that you may not be as proud of as you should be,
Yeah.
And people they're going to pick something different because, you just get too inside of it. And so I feel like fleshing out some things that maybe you may not have the most confidence in.
Hey, Rockstar, come on over here. I've got a secret to tell you. Want to know how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars? Well, my secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar to make this podcast sound great. Right now, you are hearing RX Breath Control, Declick, Declip, DS, Deplosive, Voice Denoise, Ozone Multiband Compression, Neutron EQ, and Limiting, all from Isotope. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off over at isotope.com. And the songs that come to life on the album might not have anything to do with the lyrics. It might have to do with just the fact that it just sounds really good when the band plays it.
Yeah.
It just records really well. It just comes out of the speakers right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your, we can circle back on song stuff, because song stuff's fun. I love talking about that.
Talk all day long.
But tell us about your studio now. So now we work together here.
Yes.
I remember you started putting a studio together. At one point, you asked me to come over and just show you a few things I'd learned on the podcast, even way back when and stuff. But you've been making a ton of great sounding records.
Well, thank you.
In the meantime.
Thank you. It's a humble place, but the story goes, I had a band, we did a record. Frank Sass from The Accident did a live thing for us. Bob Delavante, incredible photographer and artist in the Delavantes, he had a studio and was producing a little bit, and had Buddy Miller's old Pro Tool rig at that time, probably Pro Tools 6 or 7.
Buddy Miller's old vintage Pro Tools.
I know,
rig.
Yeah. I mean, this is 2003.
I got a vintage Pro Tools up in the house.
Yeah, nice.
Still looking for a new home.
Ooh. Well, Bob helped us make the first band record, and then every time we went to do something new, we went to a new studio and work with somebody new, it felt like. And I love working with people over again, because you can build on a relationship and have a shorthand and move forward that way. But there's also a lot to be said for working with different people and learning different techniques, new sounds. And the band was always kind of changing a little bit or evolving. And that was my goal, is to explore different sounds with different songs as we changed a little bit of lineups and stuff like that. But so we went with, after the record with Bob, we wound up doing a record with Brian Carter down in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, BC.
And incredible, really raw sounds, straight to tape, 16 track. Then Eric Fritsch, incredible local, or in our neighborhood here, East Nashville, did a record with him, and then we did a record with Brian again. But then you mixed it, and we did the dubs here, and that was a really, really aggressive sounding record that had really cool dub elements, and so all the while, like I'm just the dude, sort of overseeing, hoping that these songs shape up into something, but I'm learning from all these engineers and all these if we had a guest, Jen Gunderman comes in and plays keys and adds something, I'm trying to, I have a great example of how do I decode this? Like, what did she do that made this so great? What did you do to make a vocal sound unique and explore something different?
For the life of me, I can't remember. I went back and listened to Escalator. That's the record we did. And I was like, damn, this sounds great, man. What the hell did we do? What did I do?
Isn't that great?
It was probably an old Pro Tools setup and everything too.
Yeah. It's pretty cool when you've got that caliber you've built, and I feel like I'm kind of getting closer every day to having this vocabulary, wide vocabulary, to where, now if you do look at something, you're like, or hear something, you may not have really any idea of what it is, but does it work? Does it work in that song, and does it work in that context? And, it's the best you could make it in that day. And so, it's funny that all those tools you start gathering, but all those people kind of gave me a knowledge of, or I gave me information to sort of wash over and see if I could tap into and be inspired by whenever I started recording. And I started my own thing with my studio when I was living at a rental place and got a little Pro Tools rig, and I made a pedal steel record, or a little EP.
You playing pedal steel?
Yeah, well,
cool, man.
So it's a novelty record in a way, because it's not like a modern 10-string or 12-string pedal steel. It was a record made with this weird instrument called a multi-chord, which is the child's toy of steel guitars. It's kind of famous for being on the cover of a Buddy Emmons record. A multi-chord is on the cover of a Buddy Emmons his jazz record, and it was the biggest slight in the world because this instrument was a toy, and he was the master, still the master of all time. And he was manufacturing his own guitars, but they put this like child's toy of an instrument on his record. But the multi-chord was really fun. Lauren Ellis, who had Rock Block in town, had figured out how to modify and hot rod him a little bit.
Rock Block, wow, it's been a minute since I
man.
I almost forgotten
Steve
about that.
and all the crew.
Do you remember, this might have been gone by the time you were here, but do you remember Mike E's guitar out in Laverne?
Oh, I don't know.
Get there?
Mike E's, yeah.
That was a cool place.
Oh, there's this great, incredible, wonderful bass player. He passed a few years ago. Brian Hinchcliffe worked at Rock Block too. Miss Brian a lot. He was such a sweet dude. But a lot of good memories of going there. But I got that multi-chord there, and I studied that thing. I sat down and just got nerded out on how to apply guitar knowledge and channel it into this 6-string like toy guitar. I should have, if I had had the money, maybe I would have like gotten into a modern steel at that time. But I was on fire really learning this instrument, and I'm always an ostrich in a way. I kind of keep my head down. I don't know if it's bashfulness or shyness, but like I don't want to dig into other people's business or ape anybody else's thing. So I kind of keep my head down and let the subconscious kind of guide me mostly. But that instrument got me so on fire, and I was just playing with toys, just like I did when I had a 4-track at home when I was a little kid. And so I started playing with that, back knowledge of knowing how maybe Bob had a vocal chain, or how Brian would kind of get a drum sound with some room mics. And so gaining, like, just apply all that stuff and try and do it. And then I started, I got some calls to mess around and record some other people, and I just said yes. This was
the beginning of your recording.
Yeah, of
doing
like
the recording yourself,
of getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
And
well, so describe your studio.
Okay,
like what's the layout?
It's very simple. It's essentially the basement of my home. We're talking about figuring out how to make a living doing this thing. I wanted to keep overhead low. And even many years after the fact of doing this daily, I still I didn't want to have a commercial space. I felt like it was too volatile. And I'm a little conservative with money in terms of...
smart move as an artist.
Well, I always knew what we had to spend on promoting a record or making a record, and trying to pay people as fairly as I could. in every situation, my band included, everybody, we always felt like a success because we lived in the black and not in the red, even as an independent band. We just made it a
amazing,
thing.
yeah.
Always broke even, always still to this day. Very lucky that way. So the studio is essentially, it's all these instruments I've collected through the years in quick, reach. Everything is accessible. It's essentially Pro Tools, Mac computer, UA interface. I've got 16 pre's. I've got a couple LA610s, some Audient pre's, some Art pre's, some various junk box pre's I've found at pawn shops and stuff like that. So that's kind of the hardware land. It's not much, but it's so much in the box, and I know people get weirded out by that. It's uncool.
What, doing stuff in the box?
Yeah.
Not around here, man. It's
well,
cool.
There's such an analog fever.
Yeah, but we've crossed that threshold on recording studio rock stars. We know that you can make great sounding stuff.
Yeah, well, this is the audience
now, too.
This is the audience, and I'm sure that a lot of folks are doing that. And you're an engineer who lived in different generational gaps. Like, you worked probably on radar, you worked on tape, you worked on digital tape, different eras of this stuff, and got really good at different formats. And I've
definitely tried all the different stuff. How do we mix Escalator? Did we use the console at all for that, or did we just mix in Pro Tools?
I think we tracked through the console.
Yeah, we would have used mic pre's for recording. Yeah, but
I think it was I think in the box. And,
that's what I would think.
And you were a machine, and hopefully I was a good client that like came in, saw that you were inspired.
I think you were. Do you still owe me money or something?
Hope not. Hopefully.
No, that was a lot of fun, man.
Oh man. Well,
I mean, basically, what makes a good client is, if they pay you, that makes a good client. But when you throw a dubstep delay on the intro of a song, and then you come in and say, "That sounds great, I love it."
Yeah.
You're like, okay, that's a good client.
Oh man. Well, see, I want to, like, I hope I walked in and saw that you were inspired and you took it somewhere. And I feel like I've always trusted everybody I've worked with to lend a hand, lend a creative like identity, like you're part of the band.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's how you treat your band all the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know all the details, but I mean, so it's you, Paul Slivka playing bass, Dave Ray on drums.
Yeah, that's the
trio, right? And but you guys have done great stuff. I think you've always sort of treated it like a democracy or something.
Yeah.
One of the things that you guys pulled off, and I thought it was an occasional thing, but recently when we were talking, you revealed that you guys did a lot, which was pretty amazing. Was you would go down and get these residency gigs, down in Key West, and get to go, live the tropical life, playing music for a week at a time or whatever. And I always thought that was incredible.
Well, it was it's been a great, like, 10,000 hours gig, I living close to downtown Broadway. I never really did that. I have a lot of friends who did and sharpened everything they could down there.
Yeah.
But my music and my musical, like, leanings didn't quite apply to that.
Right.
And Key West was weird enough where, like, my combination of the band songs and the world of covers that songs we love worked down there. And we started doing that probably, I think, maybe 18 plus years ago. We would go down 5 or 6 weeks a year to play down there.
That's amazing.
And it was
big chunk of time.
Yeah, big chunk of time.
So
like, we were
give
touring,
a tip to the rock stars if they're like, man, I'd love to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple of lessons learned about how to plant that seed and grow it into something over time?
Oh man. I'd say, don't be afraid to be your own advocate. This is coming from the guy who, like, I'm Mr. Shy, and I'm not the guy who's going to call the venue 4 times and say, "Hey, book my band." But it doesn't hurt to do that. You know, if you want to be driven and make some things happen, ambitious, not a bad word sometimes.
And you got to find the right match of the venue for your music if you want to do your own stuff.
Yeah.
Did you guys mix it up with covers as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was always sort of that gig it's 4 hours, you know.
Right.
I mean, there was an era in the band where we had 4 hours of, maybe close to 4 hours of originals. We could play all the record stuff and plus stuff that never made it on the record. And whether you talk about driving some people out of the club, that would do it. But
how can you keep that many lyrics in your head?
Oh, I'm terrible. I can't remember anything. I think easily it started about 15 years ago. I've got my greasy, dirty lyric books with like sheet protectors, and I have refused to go iPad. And I know, God bless you people out there for saving paper, but I'm a Presbyterian and we have a paper trail wherever we go. And so that's my story, is I got my lyric books, and I feel like
so like a little 3-ring binder, and you can just flip the pages as you need to see the words on something.
Yeah. And but it's funny how the memory works, because like sometimes it's just like I just need the first word of the verse.
Yeah.
You know, I need the first word of the bridge. But like anything, it's a bit of a crutch. Charts are like that too, doing any sort of chart gig, you know, but recording other bands, having my own music, you know, writing, the short-term memory is tapped out. It's just tapped out. And so I try and be comfortable using those tools as much as I can. And there is a great place, and I've seen people do it so well, where they can have a chart in front of them, reference it essentially by sight, get like the form, basic things, and then they can play fluidly.
Right.
They can tap into that subconscious thing I keep talking about and just play free. But all they need is a quick reminder of what that form is. And man, that's a great place to be at.
Yeah.
Because it means you can be musical in so many different realms. And
especially arrangement and form too, because if you're going to play as a band, you all need to, you know, go to the bridge when the bridge happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's parts of me that misses having the band, and that's my only musical thing. And we maybe only play 20 songs, but we play the hell out of those 20 songs.
Yeah.
Like we play it with like heart and like passion, but that's all we know, you know. That's kind of a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, especially after you, like our band experience with that would have been doing like a 2-week tour or something like that. And then we came back, and I think we hit the studio after that, and like, boy, we were so rehearsed, you know, just you can sound, it can be such a huge difference before you do a tour or a whole stretch of gigs and after.
Yeah.
And it's a fun place to be.
Oh man. Yeah. It's a superpower when you just have a sound. Yeah.
All right. So you've got your studio now, which is you said it's Universal Audio.
Yeah.
The Apollo or something like that. Yep. And how does that work? Do you have one single space unit that does all your inputs and outputs, or do you get a couple of them and link them together? I'm not a Universal Audio user myself.
I've got one, and then I light pipe in some Audient pre's, an 8-channel piece that they make. It's great, super reliable. And then
then what about the processing? Because I know that's a big part of it too. The DSP for the plugins.
Well, I've had a lot of luck. I've got a great, wonderful tech that has helped me out through the years. He's been so helpful through the years.
So he comes over and just like helps make sure the computer's operating the way you want it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a roots rocker at heart, so like it gets a little heavy, and I'll tack some stuff. I just did one of the more dense production elements I've done in the last year or so. An artist named Colleen Ringvold, and it's probably 80 tracks. You know, lot of stuff.
That's a lot of tracks.
A lot of vocals. A lot of heavy processing.
Thank God for folder tracks.
Yes, yeah,
and
printing.
Are you
stuff.
Recording in Pro Tools, or are you using Luna at all?
Just Pro Tools. Yeah. I keep talking to some different people who've worked in different formats, and I really want to get a little tour rig. I used to have like a little tour Pro Tool rig where I could record vocals if I was down in Key West or up in DC or Virginia. If I was at somebody's house, I could just pop up something and have, you're playing a show with this other band. Like, why don't you play on our record and just throw it up? And I got Jimbo Mathis to play some harmonica and mandolin on a record that we did a while back. And you had mixed that because I remember you're cracking up. Or like, man, I wish I had tuned that guitar. But having that access to that thing on the road is pretty great. And there's a million ways to do that. Yeah. I just need to find the one that's right for me. But Pro Tools is mainly it. Occasionally I'll use a handheld recorder and do something remote, maybe some ambient sounds or some samples of like some bells. Get that in, come on and back process that whenever I get it back into Pro Tools. Here's a cool thing. This is wacky as can be. I'm working with an artist on a sort of it's an outside poetry project, and Billy Henderson is this guy's name. Wrote songs for years. Billy's a poet and does a lot of Black Slam poetry nights now. Really cool dude. Southern but wise. He's like this really Buddha Southern dude. Incredible voice in his speaking voice. But Billy doesn't necessarily have a great pocket of where his feel. But he sent me we've done like 4 or 5 songs this way now, where he sent me some songs. He's just sung into his voice memo on an iPhone, and tapped away on the turnarounds, doing sort of a little hum turnaround, and he sings. And so I took those vocals and processed them a little bit, found a pocket, chopped them up against an 808, found a pocket, and then on a few of them I've tuned him, but a few he sang dead on in the key. Acapella in the room. Chose a key out of out of the air, sings a whole song in this soulful, 70-year-old man voice, and it's got a feel. It's so cool. And the only thing I really had to do on a couple of these things was just get it into a pocket, and then build up a few instruments behind it. What a cool way to make a record.
Yeah, indeed, man. Did you find the tempo or the grid valuable in this case, or did you find that the original getting it into a pocket just means putting the instruments to it that reinforce what's already there in the voice memo?
I'm a big fan of fixed time, I will say. I started back in the 4-track era. I had my little like wind up metronome, and I would start using that. And I'm a Russian dragon, as they say, like myself. I'm not calling anybody out, but I would track that little, metronome into a mic it, and then have that my little click track,
Put it on
do
a track,
that thing.
yeah.
And then recent years, I'd have like a little hard unit 808, and put that in and use that sort of Daniel Lanois kind of like toolage of how to do some of that stuff. And now there's some 808 apps to kind of.
It's funny to hear you talking about using the 808.
Yeah, man, I love it. It's so cool. I did a record with this French artist named Madeleine Besson a while back, and a lot of it is 808 driven. And but she plays incredible piano and just really soulful singer.
Are you using one of the little mini module kind of things for your 808, or do you have like a full size?
I'd had a mini module.
It was a Korg making them or something
like 10 years ago or something like that. But yeah, using those sounds can be super creative. But what we talked a little bit about, I'll get into this. I love drummers. You can call different people to do different things, and they've all got their own flavor. Some people maybe play a little on top. Some people play behind. Some people play quiet. Some people play simply. Some people are complex. But knowing to get the best out of that person, and we're in a time crunch. We're always trying to work fast, but work smart, and So sometimes we'll get a good pass, and I know it's got the components I want, and then I'll go back in and pocket a few things if somebody's really pushed tempo.
Right.
And I do that by hand. I'll go in and chop stuff up against a subdivided, sometimes it doesn't even matter, but it's a subdivided 808 that is, swung to the point that I like it. And then I'll lean into where if they're feeling it behind the beat or a little on top, like I'll find kind of maybe visually where they're at. And I know we shouldn't look at the waveforms, but they are informative. And
no, I think that's a good reason. That's a good time to look at the screen. And the editing is one of the places where having the screen is what it's all about.
Yeah, and being around you as an editor inspired me of knowing that there's a sweet spot of how far you can take that and be musical with it, and then you can overdo it and push it too much.
Yeah,
and you watching you work was always a great and inspiring thing to know that like trust your gut. If it's pop it into shape, trust it, move on. Get moving. And so that's a thing I do. But back to the studio, I've all this different instruments I've set up. Everything is ready to go. Drum kit's mic'd. There's 3 ways to record bass immediately. There's 3 amps, three guitar amps mic'd. There's 2 vocal mics up. Everything is ready to go. So we have, you can set up stations and battle stations to track as a unit, or if you're in overdub land, like push or pull a mic here or there, and every instrument is basically 2 steps away.
Yeah.
And so
that's great.
Working with this band called the Rough and Tumble, Scott and Mallory taught me so much. I got in touch with them doing a soundtrack for a book, a book about short stories, a book containing short stories, and then songs based upon those short stories. This wonderful guy Chuck Beard did this project. It was a project here for Metro Arts Council that he put together, and it merged short story authors with musicians and this collaborative thing. But I met the Rough and Tumble working on this Based On. It's called Based On, was the book. And I got a chance to produce some singles by a bunch of different artists here in town. And I have to thank Chuck that was beyond my own musical community of playing in bands and playing shows. That was a great connector to work with some people that I hadn't got a chance to work with, like Michael B. Hicks, Phil Madeira, the Rough and Tumble, Griffin House. Lots of different people were on that record, and it threw me in the water of like, you don't know this person, you never met this person, but get together and be creative, kind of like the songwriting sessions.
What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM, TV, and film composers all have in common with you and me? We all need incredibly cool sounds that instantly transport the music we are creating to the style that we want. This is why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit with a massive library of sounds for your studio. Whether you want to create hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, pumping dance floor beats, or full orchestral arrangements, Native Instruments' Complete Bundle offers you everything you need, from drums, loops, and beats to wild synths, ultra-realistic strings, and vintage electric bass, guitars, and keys. The list goes on and on. I personally love recording real bands in my studio and then adding cool drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid keys, for example. Plus, it's a great way to make your production sound modern and unique. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off or get Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples over at nativeinstruments.com. The S Series by Atom Audio, crafted in Berlin, is a flagship line of reference monitors, blending advanced engineering and in-house design. With 5 models in various sizes and configurations, these monitors build on Atom Audio's iconic heritage while incorporating new technology for improved acoustic performance. The range includes the compact S2V with the 7-inch woofer, the 3-way S3H with twin 7-inch woofers, the vertical S3V with a single 9-inch woofer, and the powerful S5H and S5V main monitors featuring a 12-inch woofer and exceeding 131 dBSPL per pair. Despite differences in size and power, all these models provide highly analytical sound for professional audio applications. The S Series includes new woofers, mid-range drivers, redesigned waveguides, and a DSP engine for crossover optimization. The result is accurate frequency response, consistent dispersion, enhanced detail in bass and mid-frequencies with wider frequency ranges, and forward-looking digital connectivity, all in a durable design. The S Series ensures longevity in your studio, backed with a 5-year guarantee at atomaudio.com. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, otherwise known as the second half of the show. My guest today is Dave Coleman, joining here at the Toy Box studio. Right now, we're down in the studio, set up in the control room. You ready to jam?
Yeah, man. Let's talk it out.
All right, sweet. So you were telling us a little bit about this series of records you did with the Rough and Tumble.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had something you wanted to finish about that story.
Well, sometimes another musician will just teach you a ton. And Scott and Mallory are just incredibly talented, and I always had this hunger for different natural but ethereal sounds. And they always brought in new wacky ideas. What's the sound of a rolling bowl on the floor? We want that here. And, bringing soundscape kind of world into their own pop, sort of like very well crafted folk pop kind of stuff. So they taught me so much by hey, we want to try this and just figure it out and experiment until it works. I mean, bowed xylophones and, clanging on everything I have in the home to find the right click or clack.
That's great. I love doing all that stuff. I mean, you have to have the right situation for that because it's always, takes a little longer.
Yeah. And they've always had these great songs that called for these things. And I could wrap my head around where they were going. The language everybody uses is different.
It's your Tom Waits moment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. What's he building in there? Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about now you're producing other artists as well in your studio and doing a lot of that stuff. What would you say about your production process with a new artist? And I know they come in all varieties, but how about the ones that, start out with a voice memo?
Oh,
you had a specific record that did that in a very interesting way. Yeah. But I mean, just in the general way, we're like, here's my songs. What should we do now?
Well, sometimes so as a guitar player and an instrumentalist, sometimes it's sort of a package deal in terms of like somebody might approach me and they also need a band or to track a full scale record. They may want to do a tracking session with a drummer, bass player, and either myself playing guitar or them playing a guitar or piano or something like that. And so we kind of discussed that kind of like template of like, is that the right scenario or is it a build thing where we just come in and we play to an fixed time 808 or something like that, and then start adding some instruments. I had a lot of luck on build records and band records. It's different ways of approaching a song, and you're going to get a totally different feel and pocket to those things. But
you mean when you do one brick at a time kind of construction?
Yeah, totally. Right. Like from like, I've had a lot of luck with recording it just to drum machine, have somebody go in there with a guitar or piano in the room, just a room, mic, capture just the form. But sing it like you mean it, sing it to that time, get that feel, get that performance, and then ask them to go in there and then as they feel that vocal and that performance, the original performance, ape and play that instrument as closely as you can to as if you're singing it. And there's lots of great tools. If you're DIing a piano or something like that, that's great. I've had a lot of luck with.
Wait, did you say DIing a piano?
Well, like an electric piano,
right?
Yeah, like I've had good luck with getting a performance that way. In the acoustic guitar realm, there's a great thing called the Tone Dexter that gets a really usable sound of a DI acoustic that then doesn't have vocal bleed. That's been a good method, but I've had a lot of luck with that. Just that scratch track, go in there and then play that instrument. Still have that little AM radioed vocal or original performance in there to kind of make you just have a backbone to play to and play like you would live, or that dynamic, that intensity that is maybe key or crucial to that song.
And maybe this started with the 808 thing, so it's on a would you call it a consistent time, a steady time, or something?
Yeah, just keep it where you can build and have everybody's at least looking in the same choral direction.
Yeah,
not gridded out, but or not
overly stiff. On the grid, right? So let me say it back to you. So you start with something that gives you a time that you can play to, and I think as we all experience, like you can train yourself to play to a click and play an acoustic or something, or do a guide track. But when you're working with another artist, that can also throw them way the hell off. And that can be very awkward for people. Yeah. So having something that's got more of a feel to it, like the swing feel of the little 808 guy, even if it doesn't stand to the end of the song.
Totally, yeah.
Just the guide track can make a big difference. Right?
Yeah, a kick and a hat versus just a metronomic sound is going to make people who don't play with a click feel at home so much quicker. And it's wonderful if I'm working with somebody new I haven't worked with, and you just put up a kick and hat, and they play great to it. But if you set up a metronome of just a quarters, they're gonna freak out.
So you then have them do a guide track. What does a guide track look like? It's just a mic, and they're strumming and singing into the same mic. No,
just a form.
Not even worrying about a sound.
Looking to the complete sheer form, and then. That I would keep that in, and as we maybe do an acoustic guitar part, or I might just be I might then put in as they track that, even I might put in just a fundamental bass guitar that would just be like the fundamental low notes
with them or something, right?
Yeah, just super simple, nothing crazy, but enough of a foundation where somebody then can go in between that 808, hearing that vocal maybe thinned out with a really high mid notch to make it. Just out there in the background, but they're hearing their vocal line.
This is for the
melody.
Next overdub, yeah.
So we're going to do an instrument on top of these three components. Maybe that bass guitar, that AM radio, like basic track, that drum machine. Somebody then goes in and they have that foundation, and they can feel confident because they're not exposed. They're not as exposed of just like it's only that instrument.
And so maybe they're playing the acoustic guitar part next. Yeah,
and but that stair step thing, and then introducing, then maybe refining the bass part with following lines, or being informed by the melody line, or introducing some thirds or octaves to make things a little more harmonica complex. But that build thing is really, really fun to kind of see where it can evolve into. I did a song with Amelia White that was a build track on Rocket Review. So Amelia White has a song on her record called "Beautiful Sun" that was a build track, and lots of little really micro details start to occur in the song, and that element of production I'm very proud of. It's a different thing than maybe a band tracking, and the power of a band or the dynamic of a band building and moving and ebbing and flowing together. But so there's a totally different methods. But I think choosing when to build a track versus when to be a band on a track, and those are two different options that I kind of try and map out ahead of time whenever I'm doing like pre-production or sifting through some songs some artists have given me. Pre-production is sometimes a little bit of a luxury. I try.
Yeah, I know it's a challenge because when you're producing, the budget is so tiny usually that all that time needs to be spent on the recording stuff. And it's like, if you want to put in a full day of pre-production, it's like, I've tried to work that into the budget with artists. And I think I found that if that conversation comes in the very beginning, that's a smart part of the process that can go over well, but it's also easy to just blow past that.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time helping people sift through songs off the clock. But we love making records, and inherently we care. And so we want it to have the best possibility of being fun and enjoyable as we can. We've all been a part of projects that were a joy from the start to finish to make. Yeah. And then some that, they may wind up being great projects, but they're really hard.
I know. It's always been a funny combination of learning that sometimes the records that are no fun to make are the ones that are the best or most successful. And then sometimes the ones that are super fun to make, we might be the only ones to hear them. Too.
Yeah.
It's always possible. All right. So I wrote down band versus brick. Like production techniques, do you start out with a band or start with the one brick at a time? If you're going to do the band thing, what are some simple ways in your home studio? How do you manage a tracking setup that makes sense for assembling the song, getting it down as a band thing?
Oh yeah.
Because remember, don't be shy about your studio. I mean, like everybody who's listening has got some same version.
Yeah. We so I have my I have a big, not a big, but a live room where the drum kit is basically in there with me. So it's been really great I call them skull crushers, but Vic Firth makes a great cheap headphone that silences everything out. Drummers on that. Everybody's getting a click if the song needs it, if not. But bass players in the same room so they can visually see the drummer and talk out pockets. The singer or the vocal is usually in a separate room looking through a glass door to have enough isolation, just so in case somebody's really belting it out and to get where they need to for the song, the vocal's not in the drums. And guitar players in the live room together. So everybody's essentially like four corners looking at each other. So everybody's got sight lines.
And did you say the singer has like sliding glass door kind of thing?
Just looking through a glass door. Yeah.
So did you take a space that was a big room and then just like corner off one corner with a sliding glass door?
No.
How did you do that?
What I had a door built. This basement, we had gotten in there and framed it out to kind of be an apartment. I call my place Howard's Apartment Studio, and it's essentially based on that theory. When we moved in, we're like, we'll have a place for my mother, my father, if we need to. But I kind of took it over as a workspace, and it's just worked out. It's been just enough space to have everything close and cozy, and work so well. And so Bob Delavante had a little small carriage house. That was his studio. Buddy Miller has had his home with reflective surfaces. A lot of my favorite engineers really worked in non-professionally tuned spaces.
Yeah, didn't you mention Daniel and Wall?
Yeah. I like that. I like that, and part of that's necessity. It's just been what I'm experienced with, but I love character and the sound of places, and I hope that we find voices with what we do, and I hope I'm finding my voice with helping people make records that sounds that's hard for maybe some other place to achieve a sound like that. Not, maybe if they would wanna, I don't know, but something unique. And so I've tried to embrace that thing. But yeah, sightlines for four people. Sometimes we've tracked with a keyboard player in there too. It gets really tight, but But again, you got to embrace the cozy thing. I mean, there's all sorts of romanticized versions. I mean, the basement in Big Pink was teeny tiny too. And,
right.
We can make this thing work. If we can travel to, 12 hours to the gig in a van, we can play together.
The band was recording in a pool house, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I did the Bonnaroo Hay Bale studio for so many years, and that was always a very small space.
Mm-hmm.
And we just deadened it down a lot and packed everybody in together. And sure, there were lots of instances. If somebody got too loud, I was sort of screwed.
Yeah.
But when the balance of the instruments were just right in there, it was amazing how effective it was. And I mean, like I was keeping vocals because we weren't doing overdubs. We were all mixing it down to 2-track. But I mean, like you can really get away with a lot of great sounds in a small, tight space.
Yeah.
Especially with the playing together. And I think the mics get on top of each other. So in some ways, they join forces instead of sounding distant,
Yeah. And, we acoustic drums are inherently that all the time. We're used to it in that realm of like, how does this weird interacting thing work? Even if there's like little phase issues, like it sounds like a drum kit. Like that's what we come to expect to some degree. But yeah, I just did I'm working with Lynn Taylor on the BarFlies on a new record. And I did track like drum kit and live piano, upright piano in the same room. And I was blown away. I mean, theoretically, you want to use the right mic for that job, but the separation was so good, all in the same room.
Drums and piano.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've found the piano can make a great pair of room mics for the drums.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be pretty good. I am massively impressed with Isotope Ozone. I've been mastering a lot of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy for me to get a fantastic sound. The mastering assistant will help you get started by measuring your track and suggesting all the settings you need for a professional result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You simply adjust the settings to your own taste, and it sounds incredible. And the magic of master rebalance means you can reach into your mix at the mastering stage and manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums. My bandmates are pretty demanding of my mixes, but now when I send off the masters for approval and get comments back like, holy bleep, pristine, damn good mastering, crystal clear, you're a wizard, finally I love my singing, and the drums and bass sound huge, well then I know I'm doing something right. So check out the newest Ozone, RX, and all the other great apps at isotope.com and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. When you have mics working together like that, the players really have to get the dynamics right too, right?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. We talked about drummers briefly. I just played. I just did a drum session for. Steve Bowman came over with a friend of his.
Steve, I got his poster on the wall in the other room.
It's a good dude.
Shout out to you, Steve, if you hear this.
He came over and we did a rock session, drumming thing, and his friend was really hitting hard, but he had tone, which is pretty special for somebody to hit hard. A lot. I mean,
I know what you mean. There are some drummers that hit hard, and that is the tone.
Yeah.
And then there's other drummers that hit hard, and the tone goes away.
Yeah, just gone.
And then there's me on drums.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was always a desperately wanting to be a drummer.
Well, the first thing you need to do if you want to learn how to play drums is start a studio.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, by necessity. But yeah, so that guy, I was really happy with the drum sounds, and I'm forced and really pleased to do a lot of different genre styles with different people I work with, and I was really excited to have a really hard hitting drummer thing that worked really well. With
in
the tools
your
I
small
have.
Studio too.
Yeah, small studio, and again that station, that drum kit is pretty basic. I mean, D12. on the kit, 57s.
Are you often using your house kit?
Yes. Like,
what is your house kit?
It is it's a 1968 Slingerland kit. I've had all these years since I was like 13 years old. I happened to get it. My brother bought it for $300, and it's the coolest kit. And 20-inch kick drum sounds incredible under a mic. And you nerd out, you get the right heads, and you tune it well, and you have other drummers come in and sort of like lend their skills of like touching it up, like giving a little different twist here and there, and you're always going to have a kit that sounds great because the last 3 drummers that played on it are wonderful and have talent in that field. And they've touched it. And, I feel for drummers because they can't take stuff everywhere. Same as piano players or keyboardists. It's hard to drag all their gear over, but a lot of great players learn how to make the most out of that kit.
So 2 questions about the drums. Kick drum, do you like to have the front head on it? Is it a full front head, or you have the little cutout hole?
Got a port, yeah.
And how do you find a good way to mic all that? Where do you end up liking to put the mic and with the hole there and all that kind of stuff?
I've had a lot of luck with kind of 2 different techniques. A D12, like just edged into the port, pointing at the beater, or maybe even a little bit down, and then also I'll use an SM7, just about 10 inches, 12 inches away from the kit. A little bit of ambient room sound, but a little bit of pointed thing out front. Those are kind of my go-to techniques. And I will confess, I will really get aggressive on a kick drum sound and
at the mix.
In the mix.
Yeah,
the EQ,
I think you have to. Too.
Yeah, EQ is whatever it needs to be. If it's inherent to everything production that I've ever done, it is daily problem solving. There's something that happened that I'm messed up, or the sound, that I think is there has some other harmonic in it. And so being aggressive with EQs when it's time has been, super important. And not being afraid to use as many as it takes. You can comb filter something out into oblivion. I've done it.
Right.
But you can also like problem solve if you trust your ears and use tools that work.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. What about your monitors in your studio? What have you found to be useful? How do you solve the the never-ending question of, is the low end right?
Oh man, so the trust I have is a lot of working in that same space, in that same place for 12 years. Like knowing that spot works, and sending it off to be mastered, having it come back, and knowing, okay, a little bit of information from mastering engineer.
Do you have a favorite mastering engineer?
Oh, Alex McCullough.
Alex McCullough.
He's the
Shout
best.
out to you, dude.
He is the coolest, and I am forever indebted to him for having the patience to help me with the artists I work with, and being an incredible dude and musician.
Now, Alex came up, was he at Yes Master with Jim DeMaine?
Yes.
Am I remembering that right? Because it's been a minute since we crossed paths. But and then did he end up taking over Yes Master? Is that his place now or something?
So he's taken over that location. Jim decided to retire, and I just ran into Jim recently, and he's doing some wonderful photography stuff. He's an incredibly talented dude. Love Jim, and he was always great. Actually, Alex was headed out on tour, I think, with the Wrights years ago, and I happened to be in between jobs at the time, and Alex got me to work as essentially answering phones and proofing a couple records here and there whenever Alex was on the road. And so I got a chance to be around Jim a little bit, and wonderful. I got a chance to meet Dan Penn, hanging out with Jim one afternoon over there.
Right on.
And yeah, really, really thankful for knowing those guys.
Yeah.
And Bob had Jim master the first Coleman record. And so they were just always such sweet people who made it seem possible.
Yeah, totally. Jim inspired me early on because he would we'd take records over to master with him from Alex the Great, and he had built a little mastering studio upstairs in the loft in his house. It was like tucked up in a little corner at the top of the spiral stairs.
That's where we do
just sit on the couch, and it was I forgot what it was called. The TC Electronics Finalizer, I think, was like, that was the extent of the gear to use at the time.
Yeah.
But just learn how to make stuff sound great, and just use a pair of home speakers and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so mastering is important, and having that dialogue back and forth where you take your stuff over and you hear, how did that turn out? And you hear what it sounds like on the big speakers or whatever. And have you also found that the faster you're making records, the better, because then you're like short-term memory of, I remember what I did on this one that translated like that.
Yeah,
I think you go back and adjust.
Yes, I think, and it's super helpful to have your own gear that you know how it sounds, what it's capable of doing, and that vocabulary of sounds that work. And you got 6 different like ways to treat a fuzz bass on a rock song. Like which one? Like let's try those options. I think in the plugin world we are blessed with infinite possibilities. But
I don't know if it's a blessing.
Yeah,
sometimes it is. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, knowing really some signal chains that like that's your vocabulary. I as a guitar player, like I've got a pedal board that I've swapped a couple things out, but for 10 years, like these are sounds that I can use, and I could change it out, but I know exactly what that thing does, and I know how to use that piece of gear and get what I want out of it. And so, another big shout out to Atom Audio. They have been really very kind to me, and I love their speakers.
Got a pair right over there. I'll be mixing your voice on them.
Man,
the T5Es.
Yeah, that's what I use, man. I stepped up and got I'm flaking right now on a different model
or something like that.
I think but I like the T series. Like those just sound so good to me. And I know folks who work on NS10 still, and I just whatever it is, like they want that clarity and that super refined or unrefined thing or unscooped thing. But those speakers sound so pleasant to me, and I want to enjoy the process. I don't want to be beat over the head with harsh stuff. I do like I tend to mix with extra low end, and then in the mastering phase, Alex
sculpt it back out.
Can sculpt a little bit back out, but like while I'm working on it, it's going to have that thing in it, and then maybe the end product is trimmed out a little bit. And I do use some.
Well, there's something to be said too for you have to go in the direction that feels good to go in when you're working, even if you're not certain that it's the final level for something. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't feel right, how are you gonna make it?
Yeah.
So
everything.
I could see how we would add some low end on stuff too, even if we're like thinking we're gonna want to carve it back later. But I do what I enjoy about the T5Es is I do hear what's going on with low end. It reveals something cool to me in the studio, and I think learning, a handful of speakers can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love my main speakers, these Carl Tatz HD1000s, and there's a lot that they reveal, but also when it sounds so good, it's sort of like anything's possible.
Yeah.
So I like to go down on the other speakers and go to the car where not everything's possible, and it shows you where it shows you where the bumpers are, what I mean?
I'm working on a record right now with Justin Amaral, this incredible percussionist, and it's a really cool project, and it's a lot of second line drum and fife style music.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, I saw that in your playlist too. I was going to ask you about recording traditional Irish ensembles and stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That
The Sternwheelers record, that was so much fun hearing a Boron and how full it can be. I got really lucky finding a good method and a great drummer, Josh Jernigan, that just made it sound so fat, And I making that Irish record, I referenced a few things in that world, but again, like I'm going to be the ostrich. Like I don't want to chase traditional, modern, contemporary Irish music. Like, I want to make it sound good to me and inspiring to me. And maybe if I lend a little bit of my world to somebody else's music, it'll give them a little something unique,
right?
That they may not have yet, or may not have in
It
in that
need to
way.
sound like every other record that's already been done.
Yeah.
Let me spin back to recording with the band in the studio. You did mention line of sight, but we haven't talked about headphones yet. What sort of things do you want to talk about the importance of headphones for recording as an ensemble? How do you get that right? What are the likely issues you run into? How do you solve them?
Yeah. So the Vic Firth stuff is weird. I have to preface people because I work with some limitations. You know, I feel like I'm a musical person, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not an expert engineer. I didn't go to school. I haven't worked on big budget records.
Yeah, but you know what it takes to be able to play the guitar well. So that's kind of all that matters in tracking, isn't it?
Well, it helps to be super helpful to be a musician. Just think musically and play it as a band. Like, it's got to sound great. I mean, with my band, we played every tiny little spot you can, and played, you know, quiet rooms, loud rooms, big outdoor things. And we had to think and be on our feet and bring the best we could to that setting. And so, I hope that when people come to the spot, I kind of have to preface them. The Vic Firth stuff, not a lot of low end in them. They're kind of punchy, but it's going to help you got to sacrifice a little bit just at the gig. Like, you can't quite hear enough of yourself, but trust your intuition and do that. The more me thing, you know, is something I've never really gotten into. I want everybody to hear the same thing. Cause my background is all playing. If you get a monitor, you're lucky. Like, play as a band, make it work. And so I'm a firm believer in that. It doesn't help some people, and some people want to have their own mix.
So let me say that back to you. What you're saying is, and I've experienced this, when you go play on stage, there's an element of the sound that is almost guaranteed to fall apart on you, and you have to be prepared for it. So, like, if I'm going to rehearse for a live thing, I've determined to start using my Vocal Master PA up there, PA, and rehearse that way, because it is really hard to get comfortable. Like, you know, even if I was going to do acoustic and vocal and go get up on a stage somewhere, instead of just rehearsing by myself, singing with the acoustic guitar, it's more useful for me to get on the mic and plug in the guitar where everything's a little too loud and it's a little too ringy and it's on the verge of feedback, because that's what stage is like.
Yeah.
And so you're saying in the studio, it's a good attitude to treat the headphones as let's try and get them where they need to go, but let's also assume that the headphones are going to have some limitations for us. Together.
Yeah, I think,
and be prepared to just be in that comfort zone.
Yeah, find a comfort zone and be prepared to be uncomfortable. You know, like maybe it is hard to hear something, but if it's hard to hear something, maybe that's the note you need to dig in more on to make it pop.
Right. Yeah.
But that, you know, mix yourself. You know, everybody's hearing the same thing. Like, play together. You know, if the bass player is too loud, have them soften up. If the guitar player is too loud, you know, find your times to be aggressive and when to kind of pull back. You know, so I'm a firm believer in that. I got to say, the Audix M50s are great phones. I love those a lot. That's my comfort zone in sort of the headphone world. Either monitoring or when doing any other sort of overdubs or things like that, when click bleed isn't a thing.
I've found that one of the challenges is I go out and play guitar on
Audio-Technica M50s.
Audio-Technica,
I'm getting my labels wrong. Sorry, people.
Do you ever feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take you years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process that I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, but condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that this will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the ultimate snare mixing trick. And I'll see you at the front row table of the Grammys. Cheers. Let's see. What are the ones I've got too? Are the biodynamics? Is that what they are? Oh, I can't. Oh no, KRKs. Sorry, KRKs, and I forgot the model number. But anyway, I've got like so many different variations of headphones in the studio. I think the KRK 1200s. I think that's what I've got that we use a lot of. They're right here next to me. In fact. Yeah, nope. Sorry, I said that entirely wrong. The KNS 8400s. We got a bunch of those. And they're light on your head. But I remember that when I came to Nashville, I was amazed that most of the pro studios had these black Tascam T20 headphones.
Yep.
And they were like flat, and you put them on, and you're like, God, these sound terrible and stuff.
Yeah.
And what I learned from everybody was that the last thing they wanted was a bright, shiny headphone sound, because you have to have those on your head all day long. And people would say they just rip your head off, if it's too bright and trying too hard to be hi-fi. So they kind of liked that it was darker and duller. And, maybe also it's in Nashville, so things were probably bright to begin with.
Yeah.
But what I've found is if I'm playing guitar and I'm standing next to the drummer and we're doing this rock thing, it's tricky because there's like a tone that needs to be gotten out of the amps. The drummer needs to hit it hard enough, all that. And I've learned to really appreciate when people are like, can you bring the drums down in the headphones? But the solution for me has been get started where the headphones are screaming on my head for a second and just be like, comfort zone, that's the right sounds. And then I just put earplugs in and put the headphones back on, and it just like cuts everything down in the whole room. And if you can learn, or if I learn to trust my sound and my tone and like the touch on the strings and everything too, and not second guess myself, then I can even turn the headphones down to a much quieter level and be in a good survival zone for playing for hours if I want. And still get the sound that I want. But it's a tricky balance too. Like when I've been recording here with my band, I don't have an engineer in here who I can trust who's making sure that the sounds are going down right. So there has to be like kind of set it and forget it, which is tricky. How do you manage that? What are some ways that you've found to navigate, set it and forget it, and also be the engineer who's making a call on sounds?
It's sort of practicing, doing it a lot of oftentimes I'm responsible for guitar and playing the song and maybe directing some cues within a take, as well as like having a mixer up and adjusting some volumes, maybe pushing the vocalist a little bit in the quiet verses and then bring.
Where do you
down.
sit? Do you stay with your guitar in the engineer's seat the whole?
Yeah. And I've never. It's been a one-man shop, Bob Delavante, big influence on me. He is one of the most creative people I've ever known, and he's so self-reliant that, only in the last few years, as through his photography and design stuff, has he had other people working with him. But he's just so self-reliant, and I always admired that. And I want to be. I kind of took that idea of like, I'll learn different languages and different tools, and be as independent as I can. And we all got to ask for help sometime, no matter what. Maybe know when your limitations. I will say that, like, if I'm tracking tracking with a band, a lot, as much as I can, I'll keep that live track, as much as I can. But if I feel like, I kind of lost it, I was more thinking about the recording or the mixing thing, I'll go back and maybe recut guitar and hope that I can get to an inspired place and put something on it that is better than that tracking guitar.
Yeah, so there really is a thing that can happen in the moment that's hard to get back to.
Yeah, yeah. And that thing is special, but it's also, again, the
special,
brick
but
thing.
It can also be meshal.
Yeah, and
that was supposed to sound like messy.
Messy, yeah, meshal. Yeah, there's competition there among instruments, and we sometimes don't have the time to prepare and divvy out when people are like deep arranging, like when somebody's like doing some fills or any sort of trades of sort of who's accenting verse or chorus, or who's kind of, what's the spotlight on when it's, in the context of the song and the vocal, that shift back and forth between different instruments that make things really interesting and new things occur. So tracking a band, maybe, track 3 or 4 takes, and hopefully that gets figured out quickly. I don't like to track, multiple takes of songs, because it diminishing returns real quick.
Totally. Yeah. The energy just becomes bland.
Yeah, and I find the same with singers singing too. I have leaned a little bit in some vocal tuning whenever, like when I first started doing this, I thought, no way, I'll never do it. Like, let it be raw. But I've learned, or I've accepted a philosophy of doing some vocal touch-ups to know that, like, you got 4 or 5 takes and somebody's going to stop singing with heart and feel and nuance.
Even at 4 or 5 takes, it's already like, all you have to do is sing a song yourself all the way through to realize how much that is.
Yes. Yeah.
And just have to sing it over and over again.
Yeah. And people start overthinking it,
I find I'm always amazed when I comp a vocal at how useful the takes can be from, take 0 or 1 all the way to the very last thing we did. The place where the last thing, I'm also amazed at how often I'll suggest a different way to sing lyrics in the verse and all that, and then I go back and comp it, and I just use their original one in the beginning.
Yeah.
Even though they got the thing right that we intended to do, it just wasn't nearly as good.
Yeah.
And you can't know that in the moment. Your memory can't hold on to all those performances.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even find note-taking to be useful for me. It's just better to just go and comp.
I feel so sorry. I gotta apologize that I did that to you on a record.
What did you do? I don't. Were you
we
taking
comped
notes?
by like listening down. I would make notes on this line and like, I want one. I had my little formulaic, like I chose in my head out of what my gut reaction was, and had had you pop stuff together. Versus just like listening down and like checking and as you go in a peaceful chronological order and being musical with it. Like it was so backwards, and it took me really being there and doing it a ton to realize like that's natural to me, and it's a performance. Like, what a trust level it is to have somebody let you comp their vocal.
Yeah,
and choose their
comping.
Yeah.
Has really become a performance for me now. It's a speed.
Yeah.
Speed
Curating
race.
that is like such a big trust level. And sometimes you get it right, and people like are so thankful. And sometimes you might think what they want, but they don't really They want something different,
What I've learned about comping vocals or from comping vocals is on records, particularly, is you can't be zoomed out and zoomed in at the same time. You have to just accept that at this moment, for now, I'm zoomed in.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be zoomed out. And that's just the way the creative process is.
Yeah.
And I think you beat yourself up when you try to be in two places at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can, think of the times where I'm zoomed in and somebody comes in and they're zoomed out. And I'm using these terms figuratively, rock stars. But, and then they make a comment and then I'm like, feeling ashamed that I didn't notice it or hear it or whatever. And it's like, well, you're not zoomed out. You're paying attention to these details right now, and just get to the end, get to the finish line, and then zoom back out.
Making that trip back in and out, and some folks I've talked to about my job, whether it's my family or friends, they ask kind of the specifics of like how it works, and I kind of always come back to like, I feel like I'm doing the best I can whenever I'm following through and seeing a project through at a consistent timeline, at a reliable timeline. A lot of people get stuck and never finish a project and or see it through or get frustrated or get obsessed with it. And everything's got its own timeline. Doesn't mean a record can't take 2 years. Like I've got one record is still sitting out there for years and years and years.
But that's one of the biggest gifts we bring as engineers or producers to an artist, is that ability to help them cross the finish line.
Yeah. And that thing is so important. And everybody's different. When is it ready to be finished? But I like that idea of pushing. I have learned in the last few years, learning from you and Eric Fritch and some other folks of how to work quickly and move fast. That's important, but I've also kind of come full circle and learned like, I got to slow down. Like, this person wants to enjoy these stories and talk a bit.
Right.
And they're not concerned about the time. That it's important for them to be comfortable there and have that experience like itself,
Yeah, that's good thinking. It's like you have to learn how to have dynamic in your work flow, just like you have dynamics in music. You got to know how to be fast and know how to be slow, and then read the room. Yeah. Read the client, read the artist.
Yeah, the psychological element is huge, and knowing, trying to be a nice enough person to be flexible to work with different kinds of personalities.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's hard. It tends to be probably in the same way that I have some friends who say, "Oh, I always learned how to eat fast. That's why I eat fast," or something. I think I learned how to be fast in the studio and do things fast. I don't know why. It's just in my personality. So it's hard for me to slow down sometimes. And the hardest part of slowing down is going slow, but then knowing that in the moment that it's time to like go, you got to go from slow to like, this is the one,
Yeah.
I was tracking, we were actually tracking one of the songs that Brian Carter wrote on the last session we did. And he had, a very unique pace of getting into the song, and he had his way of doing it. It's a great song. He's a genius artist. And for me, it was like, I had to just be like, okay, here we go. All right, cool. And then it's like, we're rolling, and it's like, boom, got to deliver got to do my best in that moment.
Yeah.
This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. All right, so let's see. What else am I going to ask you about? Oh, you mentioned earlier. You mentioned finding your voice, and I think you're talking about finding your voice as a studio and a producer, but you also had to find your voice as an artist.
Yeah.
So my question is, how did you find your voice, and where was it?
Oh man. I guess I'd just off. That's a hard one. I mean, I just so self-reflective, which is like, ugh, who wants to hear that? But I will say, I had some great teachers that gave me enough confidence to be who I was, and not be ashamed of it, you know. And learning that I felt like some of the strongest stuff I had done through the years was a little understated, and not pushing so hard, like that medium place of being a little quiet and reserving dynamics. Trusting my drummer with my own music, Dave Ray, and his musicality, and totally embracing his musicality.
He's got a great pop drumming sense.
Yeah, but he's unique.
His drum style just pulls the song along.
Yeah, he's such a musical drummer. But trusting him and not asking him to be something other than who he was, like embracing that like uniqueness in us, whatever that is, or quirkiness. Even.
You didn't try and write all his drum fills for him?
I gave up on that pretty quick. Yeah, I think I tried to do that a couple times, and that didn't go over well. Yeah, I think. And then there were some really cornerstone artists, like Duane Jarvis was a big one for me. I think Tim Carroll's a big one, and I'm lucky to make a bunch of music with Tim. Think the world of him and his sort of philosophy of like making art, just pushing forward, and some like embracing a pretty straightforward form to allow you to be creative. Like Tim's the master of that world. Like I think about Merle Haggard's Silver Wings, super simple song, but it is a perfect song to me. That simplicity allows it to be so expressive, and like Tim has that thing. And so I kind of lean in that direction. So kind of finding that window and not chasing other people, like that's kind of where I felt like I've found a voice, and also that desire to always move a little bit in some spectrum of identity and not be one thing for the rest of my life. So I think that's it. With the sound of the studio, I think it's always changing. Being on the show is special to me because I know there's so many unique and talented people doing this, and they've got their own thing, and I'm trying to do that thing like you and just find my own voice doing it. And I'm lucky that people trust me to do this. It's a privilege to do that, and I hope that I'm getting better. I hope I'm changing and not just giving it the old number 13 treatment, you know.
What's the number 13?
I don't know, you know, like
the old number 13 treatment.
Yeah, you know.
Was that the original label on Rolling Rock beer or something?
No,
like that?
well, maybe so.
All right, so I'm going to jump to our closing question. This is one I like to ask all our guests on the show. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you get to go back in time and find young Dave as he's learning his Tom Petty covers. What was the other band you referenced it when you guys were back out on the plateau?
Bad Company, man. That was all we loved. Oh man,
being the Plateau Rockers,
Plateau.
Dave and the Plateaus.
It's my career, baby.
It was your career. And so you go back and you say, listen, Dave, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself in hindsight, if you could?
I would say that that make the best piece of art you can that day, and trust your gut and your ears. Like, we all sometimes want to make that, like, profound statement and put too much pressure on ourselves. And I think just being the best you can and being as expressive and unique, embracing your own identity as much as you can that day, and being relaxed. I mentioned the Russian dragon thing earlier.
Right.
Man, you tense up and you get that red light syndrome. I'm proud that I feel like I have shed that to a great degree. Like, I don't freak out. Like, it's okay. Like,
yeah.
And that level of comfort is sometimes hard won for different people. But trusting that you can, it's okay. Just be free and trust yourself and what you're going to lend to it. That's going to be the best chance you got at being anything unique.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's something.
Yeah. Not every day has to be the day that is meant to create the masterpiece that your entire career is going to be judged on. It's just like, just have some fun.
Yeah. We talked about running earlier before we started the podcast. And I feel like that's I don't like a lot of competitive sports myself. I like something where I'm just working against, if I'm running, I'm just working against myself in terms of, like, I'm competing against myself, but I just want to do the best I can that day and feel good.
Yeah.
And, dignity and self-identity it's a tough thing with this job in doing anything musical, because it is all subjective. Who knows what's great? Who knows who's any good, really? I mean, people can put up their own, guardrails as much as they want, but, like, I think there's a place for everybody, honestly. And I hope that I'm right.
Well, in our own perspective on what's good, it's like one day it's great, the next day, I don't know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Other records, other music too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Different things, it's going to hit you different in different days. And I was listening back to some stuff that I loved as a kid, and it hit me differently. It didn't resonate like it did when I was a kid. I was like, oh my God, I thought this was the greatest thing in the world.
I remember doing that. I remember going back and listening to the Meat Puppets, which was like my number one. Mm-hmm. And I went back and I was like, shit, this was a little out of tune in some spots. And then,
it's like Jimbo.
Then hopefully shortly after that, I was like, oh, but who cares?
Yeah.
Hey, so dude, it's awesome to have you here on the podcast, man. Thanks for coming and doing this with us. Let the rock stars know, how can they find you online? Where do you want them to go check out your music? What if they're just ready to come to Nashville, make a cool ass record with you?
Oh man. You can find me and kind of a little bit of my world. Here I am self-expressing, exposing myself to the world, being vulnerable. The Dave Coleman, like the camping gear, on Instagram. And then look up the band The Colemen, coal like you burn, men as in the lesser gender. But yeah, just you can The Coleman, and yeah, that Instagram account. That's probably the best ways. I have a website called howardsapt.com. And if you're interested in recording or being musical together, you can message me there. But yeah, it is such a cool thing to be here, and I'm such a fan of Lidge, what you do, what you've done for recording in general in Nashville.
Thanks,
it's
man.
super meaningful to be here and be a part of this community you've built, and I am super excited to be here to do this thing and be a part of this community that you've built. And thank you for listeners for
hanging with us,
being patient enough to listen to somebody doing this thing And
Also, Rockstars, I want to remind you that we have a playlist in the show notes. So click down and you can go listen to a bunch of these great records that Dave's done of his own music and records he's produced for other artists, including Tim Carroll, who you were just talking about. Some great rock stuff in there. Dude, thanks for hanging with us. Rockstars, thanks for listening. Dave, I'll see you in the studio, dude.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much, Rich.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lyd Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible: Lewitt, Grace Design, Adam Audio, Native Instruments, and Isotope. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, then please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes below, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio because they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.